I think that, Mike, what has been king in the last 10 years of real estate is appreciation, right? You see many people buying properties. I mean, they love to brag about it on Facebook too, but they bought a property for X and sold it for 2X a year later or 2 years later or whatever it is, right? That is no longer going to be the controlling factor. What's going to be the controlling factor is good old Robert Kiyosaki 101, cash flow.
Welcome back to Keeping It Real Estate. I'm your host, Mike Roeder, and today we have a special guest joining us, Matt Faircloth, the co-founder and president of DeRosa Group. Matt has been a full-time investor for 15 years, and in that time, he has successfully completed projects involving dozens of fix and flips, office buildings, single-family homes, and apartment buildings. He's amassed a portfolio of over 1,000 units, and he is also the author of Raising Private Capital, How to Build Your Real Estate Empire with Other People's Money, which was actually published by Bigger Pockets Publishing, and it sold over 50,000 copies, which congrats on that, Matt. So with that, welcome to the show.
Mike, thank you so much for having me here, and thank you for that intro.
Matt, your journey in real estate is truly inspiring. Could you share with our listeners how you and your wife, Liz, started your real estate journey with just a $30,000 loan and how you've grown it to managing over 1,800 units now?
Well, bumping into a lot of walls and a lot of ups and downs, Mike, and mistakes, and then not getting our teeth kicked in, and then getting back in the boxing ring afterwards. So, but that's not the answer, right? That is the answer, but that's not. That doesn't answer the question directly. The way that we did it was by trying things, trying ways to scale, and slow and steady. We did not just go to some run to the back of the room guru thing about how to buy apartment buildings and then just bought 5 apartment buildings and here we are. Certainly not. We scaled slow and steady, learned lessons, then grew, learned lessons, then grew. Sometimes learn lessons by wins, sometimes learn lessons from mistakes. We've always been geographically centric as a company. So we started out in Trenton, New Jersey. Way back when we first got started, the $30,000 loan that we started with was in Philadelphia. But then we moved to New Jersey, so we started and we built up in Trenton, and then and that slowly became a few other cities in our portfolio. And it's interesting to say, DeRosa's only done business in I think like 5 cities in the United States ever, and so we're not across the board, take me to wherever the deal is kind of a company. We are a very geographic focused, hunker down. If I do one deal, I want to be able to do a dozen. With the team and with the resources and with our know-how of the market. So that's the broad brush of how we scaled.
Well, I absolutely love that. I love that you're, geographic centric. Looking back on our real estate career, that was one of the mistakes that we made when we first started apartment investing, is we were opportunistic and we were jumping all over the map, and it worked well at first. But then when you have to start flying to all these different markets and doing site visits and knowing the market and staying up to date on the market, it can be tough. So I love that you did that. That makes total sense in my mind.
Yeah. Thank you. And I remember back in the day, Mike, when it was all in my backyard. I mean, when everything was inside of 30 minutes away from where I laid my head every night. And there was something to that. It's just the problem is that where I was, it was hard to scale beyond a couple hundred doors. It was, in New Jersey is where we were at the time. And it was hard to get very large in that part of New Jersey. So we ended up having to seek new markets that were well away from where I laid my head every night. And that's how but by developing the systems and the team to scale outside of where we lived, it became possible very quickly.
Got it. I love it. And you've been investing for now, I believe, about 15 years. I'd love to hear what lessons that you've learned throughout your real estate journey. Obviously, you've been through some pretty big ups and downs. Any lessons that really stick out to you at all, Matt?
Yeah, so I can certainly cite some mistakes that we made, Mike, or and we were able to cure the mistakes. That's probably one lesson in there, is that if you allow a mistake to own you, then it could be what bankrupts you, puts you under, right? But if you address the mistake and find ways to cure it, find ways to navigate it, find ways to mitigate it and deal with it, then it can eventually become okay. A mistake that we made, that we worked around and navigated, was buying an office building. And so we had gotten into the game buying a lot of residential property, single family homes. We're primarily residential landlords. We've also done dozens of fix and flips as well. So just providing residential housing was something that we had gotten pretty good at. We decided early in our career, definitely way earlier than we should have, we scaled into commercial office space. That, Mike, the distraction, the mistake was it was a distraction in buying a new asset class that we'd have to learn and figuring out and just assuming that it would work exactly like a residential property did. So we had to figure out how to run a commercial asset. And it was a new learning curve for us, not something that we were very good at, and something that, quite honestly, Mike, slowed us down a lot. Had we taken that money and just bought, this is not a cheap office building, we could have bought probably 7 to 8 reasonable size residential projects, reasonable size for us at the time, with the money that we paid for that office building. And we could have scaled out much faster, I think, and it wouldn't have hindered us. Now, we turned the office building around. We figured it out. It made us stronger landlords long term, but we could have scaled much faster residentially in the residential world had we just stayed focused on one asset class and allowed ourselves to be maybe a little bit bored. It's okay to be bored. I mean, you don't have to be super excited every day. This business is, if it does well, it's supposed to be a little bit boring, and that's good. But I wanted to be excited and wanted to be challenged and I probably should have just gone and gotten a hobby, but I decided that no, I need to try this new thing early in my career. And had I not done that, I probably would have scaled that much faster.
Got it. No, that makes total sense. And, obviously you got into office. Do you still have office buildings today? And were those hit, fairly hard during COVID? And how did those, operate compared to your other asset classes, during COVID?
I still own that lovely office building that I was telling you the story of, and I bought it many years ago, and I still own it today. Proud to say I'm in the middle of selling it right now. But it is funny. It didn't get hammered as bad during COVID. When it got hammered was during the financial downturn of 2008, 2009. That's when we bought it, right? And so we bought it thinking that we could get a single tenant to lease it. This is a 10,000 square foot office building. We thought at the time, pre-crash, that a single company would come and lease it from us, and they probably would have. But the crash took a lot of companies' capacity away. It really sucked a lot of wind out of the market, and it really slowed a lot of things down, including the state of New Jersey, which is who we thought was going to lease it from us, because they were gobbling up office space all around this thing. And then Governor Corzine lost his reelection bid, and this guy you might have heard of named Chris Christie beats him. Right. And Chris Christie just was like, okay, the state is no longer spending money. The bank is now closed, the Bank of New Jersey. And so we're not going to be leasing any more office space anytime soon. And he laid a bunch of people off, and then the crash happened. Right. So Liz and I are left with this office building that was designed for a single tenant, and we did not have a single tenant. And again, this is a residential landlord that knew how to flip houses, that knew how to get a 1-bedroom ready. And now all of a sudden, me and my wife are left with this vacant office building that's 10,000 square foot. Like, okay, well, what do we do with this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a scary situation to be in. Obviously, you figured it out and you found a tenant for it. Correct?
We cut it up. No,
okay.
We cut it up into we were like WeWork before WeWork was cool, So we carved it up into small little nooks and leased them out. But it took a while. We leased them out one by one, and that leasing effort took my focus away from the residential housing space, and it made me push all in to get this office building leased so that we could break even, and then eventually started turning a profit with it. But that was a distraction for a while, and it took my eye off the ball of the residential housing space that got juicy in 2008, 2009, and that. So we caught up, and we got back into residential housing in 2010, 2011, when it was really starting to recover. And that's when we started raising capital from investors, and we're able to point to our track record, including the successful office building at that point, as to our track record in being able to put investors' capital to work. And so it was a success story longer term. And that, don't get me wrong, I don't regret anything. It's just, you talk about lessons, right? And the lesson there was just about staying focused and being able to scale quickly if you stay focused on a specific asset class, specific market, specific initiative.
I love that guidance. Just stick to what you're good at. You might have to pivot, throughout time. What asset classes are you focused now during 2023, and what do you see going forward as well?
Well, our success has been in residential housing, even fix and flips, Mike. I found to be a bit up and down. It's a grind, fix and flips. I mean, finding a deal, finding the contractor, because some contractors are overbooked, or maybe you find that you're using them too much. So you got to find somebody else that you can use, because this contractor is like working on 3 jobs of yours. So you might want to, if you get a 4th deal, get that 4th deal to somebody else, whatever. So and try and work out deals with contractors to where they can't screw you and everything like that. I mean, it was, it was a messed up world of fix and flips. And I found it like, for fix and flips, is like walking up to a roulette wheel. And it's like, is it going to hit red or black? Is it going to make money or not? And that you never know. Sometimes you make a lot of money. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you break even. But I found that the residential landlording world was one that I could count on. And the more deals I did, the more money we made. And so we just pushed all into residential landlording, and the more comfortable we got with it, the more we scaled out, and eventually did in-house property management, in-house maintenance team, in-house leasing. You scaled out the property management company with our units into the low hundreds of doors, and started taking down larger and larger projects. And bought, a lot of scattered site single families and small multis, duplexes, triplexes, mixed use buildings. That was our portfolio for a period of time. Then started to focus on larger deals as more investors started to show up that wanted to work with us. So we're able to buy a 10 unit, then bought an 18 unit, then scaled up to a 49 unit. That one was outside, was out of town. That was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So that was where we really started to push into mid-sized multifamily. And the more, funny thing, Mike, the more deals of those we did, the more money we made. So my wife and I were like, why don't we just abandon the rest of our efforts, and not do any more fix and flips, not do any more everything else, just push all into mid-sized multifamily. And that was in like 2015, I think. And it just worked. And the more deals we did, the more money we made. And so we scaled it more into Lancaster, Pennsylvania, more to North Carolina, then eventually to Kentucky. Our team grew as we were scaling, and we were off to the races.
Got it. And I'd love to speak a little bit more on, team. Obviously, you manage 1,800 units right now, so pretty sizable operation. And building and managing a successful real estate business really requires that leadership and team management. Are you able to describe kind of the structure of your company and your team, and any strategies that you've implemented to really align the whole team and to keep charging forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to get into that a little bit, Mike. And that, well, first of all, I found out in my scaling process that there were things that I was great at, and there were things that I was terrible at. And one of the bane to my existence was doing things that I was bad at. So remember talking about contractors messing you up, right? Well, I'm not good at dealing with contractors. I'm not good at negotiating with them. Not good at dealing with tenants hands-on either, because I believe them when they tell me that their tire blew out, or they can't pay their rent because they lost their job, or because they whatever, insert excuse here. I would listen to them and believe them, because I'm a nice guy. I needed to surround myself by people that that can negotiate in situations like that, and say, okay, listen, I get it that your tire blew out, or I get it, Mr. Contractor, that you can't show up for 4 weeks. We had one contractor telling me he couldn't show up on the job because his dad had died, but guess what? That was the 3rd time his dad died, right? So it's like, okay, well, yeah. And it's like, wait a minute, hang on. How many dads we got here? Yeah. He had to take 2 weeks off the job because his father died. I'm like, wait, hang on. And at first I was like, oh man, I'm so sorry. I think I'm going to send him a card,
Like, you feel bad.
Yeah, I feel terrible. Oh my goodness. It happened again. Oh goodness. Anyway, but I surrounded myself by people, the more I grew, Mike, that filled in parts of my personality that didn't exist or that I would not be great at. And so I found out that there's different personality types that are required to be successful in real estate investing. I believe this, I'm so passionate about this now that I developed a free personality assessment for people to take to determine what their real estate personality is. And so I am a relationship building, attention getting capital raiser guy. And so the first big addition to my team was someone that's a project management, doesn't smile and laugh as much as I do kind of person, better at dealing with contractors, does not take their BS, would call them out the first time about things like that, and is better at just managing and orchestrating, right? His name is Justin Fraser. He's still the asset management arm of our company. And he was able to help me with a lot of the scaling and operations ops, the backbone of the company, in that. And we also were able to bring on underwriters, analysts, people who, can analyze deals and live in Excel, and, they don't have smoke coming out of their ears after 5 minutes of Excel exposure like it does for me. And so there's that. There's also people that are better at, like, that have market knowledge, specific market knowledge. Like, hey, I know Winston-Salem, North Carolina is a great market, and I'm going to go in there and build relationships. So they're like, broker relationship building kind of folks. And so those are really the personalities you brought into our team, and the team that we scaled into. And then of course there's the property management partnerships that we developed too. The PM companies and that. So we use their resources and their boots on the ground too.
I love that. And I love how you're hiring other people that really have strengths where you have weaknesses. And I think there's a lot of people out there that focus a lot of time and effort, trying to work on their weaknesses, trying to get better, which is, a good thing to some extent. But if you can hire someone on that has that strength and that can get in there and do it really well, I mean, man, you can progress so much quicker. So I love that. Yeah. Matt, I'd love to shift gears a little bit. You wrote a book that's been very, very successful, over 50,000 copies, raising private capital. You've been a regular contributor to Bigger Pockets, educational webinars. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the book and just some top takeaways from that book that you wrote.
Well, thank you for mentioning it. And I should mention as well that Bigger Pockets has just launched a revised edition to Raising Private Capital. So folks want to check that out. Here's the cover here for those who are watching the video. And the new introduction is written by Pace Morby. It still has the introduction written by Joe Fairless. Both of, which super successful juggernaut entrepreneurs. And I've also written a bunch of new content for the book as well. So super proud of it, super excited about it, and everybody should check it out. The book is about, in general, that the premise is that everyone has access to people with money in their own network, in their own Rolodex, in their own social media feeds. The key is knowing where to look for it and knowing how to speak a language that money that's out there in our own networks will listen to, right? And these may be folks that believe it or not, did not read Rich Dad Poor Dad. These may be folks that have never heard of things like Bigger Pockets or your podcast or my YouTube channel or whatever. These are folks that don't know anything about real estate investing. And those are folks that really we can all work with closely in showing them the power of real estate investing and showing them how great real estate investing is as an alternative investment vehicle for everyone. And that's the premise of the book. The premise of the book is about how to find money out of your own network and how to attract it to yourself. The new book's got a picture of a magnet on it because that's what we are as capital raisers. We are magnets. And that's just how to function is that in your network and attract money to your business and then put it to work in proper arrangements.
Got it. We'll definitely check out that book. I've heard very, very good things about it. And, Matt, obviously you're a very busy guy. Alongside your real estate ventures, you're also a devoted family man. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you're able to balance, your personal life with your work life. I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there and, just people working, in the corporate career field as well that have a tough time balancing. So any guidance that you can share there?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny that there are, and I still deal with this, And I just finished a book this morning called The Relentless Elimination of Hurry. Phenomenal book. Very faith-based, so you got to be willing to listen to it from that ear, but if you are, it is a phenomenal book. And so I find that there is a constant act, Mike, of releasing the business from my brain at times, right? Like when my kids get home from our neighborhood pool in like a half an hour today, real true story, right? when they get home, I'm going to go to dad mode, whether my to-do list for work is done or not. And I might have to do what I call the second shift, which is once they go to bed, I come back and I do my stuff then, at like 8:30 at night, and, burn through a little bit of midnight oil or whatever. And that's because I won't sacrifice those kinds of precious hours of family time. And I'm willing to turn the cell phone off. The little tip, Mike, I figured this out recently. I turned off the notification function on my cell phone for email. And so when an email comes in, a lot of times I don't realize it's a psychological thing, but these cell phones can be diabolical, right? That they like to alert you and tell you when there's something to do, and they want your attention. It's like another child that's waving its hand in the air saying, please give me attention. Please give me attention. I'm your cell phone. And so I turned off the email notification function on my phone. So when I get an email, I don't see it, little M for Gmail looking at me. I don't have that anymore. So now I can just, if I need to do something on my phone or check something or whatever, I don't have to oh, there's an email. And then I'm down the email rabbit hole while my kid wants me to have a catch with him. I'm not perfect, Mike. Nobody is, right? But I find that the more I can be present with them and show them that I'm present with them and am fully there for them, the better off I am. So, and that just forces me to put the business on the shelf sometimes for family.
I love that strategy or that tip. I've done the same thing where I turn notifications off on the email, turned it off on, Facebook and Instagram, and just all those distractions when you're trying to be present with your spouse or your kids or, just a friend. I've seen tremendous progress, in those avenues of life just because of those little tweaks. So I appreciate you mentioning that. And I'd love to dive even further into kids. It sounds like you teach your kids about financial literacy and investing. Any tips that you have there at all for us?
Well, it's funny. We play Monopoly with my kids because they're old enough now. And now my 6-year-old daughter runs around talking about how she's going to buy a hotel. Because, you're right. 4 red houses plus 1 equals a hotel, right? So she knows about that, and now she knows about hotels. And I'm very clear with my kids what mommy and daddy do for our jobs. And then you got to, give it to them in kid language. So I can't say like, well, we're a private equity firm that buys multifamily assets or whatever. No, daddy gives people houses to live in, and people pay daddy once a month to live in the houses daddy provides, and I give them really great places to live with playgrounds and pools, and I fix it up and I make it really nice. And it's my job to keep their house nice and safe and clean. And it's their job to do the same thing and to be contributors and also to pay us once a month for living there. Right. So we both have a role, and us and the tenants do. And I also have taken my children, both of them, to they both have walked properties. My children have played on the playgrounds with the kids that live in the properties. I make sure they do that, and I'm just like, listen, the only thing is you do not tell any of those kids that your daddy owns this place, right? You just go and ask them what their names are and you go play with them. That's it. And so I make sure that they see it and also see the humanity of the real estate that we own. I kind of don't like the doors conversation. How many doors do you have, or whatever, because there's human beings behind those doors as well. So I try and teach my kids the obligations that we have as landlords, and the joy that we get is of being landlords and the lifestyle we get because of it, but also the responsibility that it brings as well.
I absolutely love that. And I think, there's so much that you can teach kids and get kids involved with. Earlier this week, I had my 10-year-old analyzing comps, competitive properties, asset that we were looking at. And she's 10 years old. And I was like, I don't know if she can handle that yet. It took 15 minutes to teach her, and she was just off to the races. She's like, Dad, I love this. I could do this all day long. Can I call the comps? And so I think a lot of times we don't give kids credit for how smart they truly are. So I love that.
Try that. I had a buddy doing that he was a sales rep, and he was trying to call on a client, and he couldn't get the client to call him back. Like he was trying to kick the door in to sell his, whatever it was, these Xerox machines or whatever it was. So he had his 10-year-old call the client and leave him a message. And I was like, could you please call my daddy back? He's a nice guy. He really wants to talk to you. Can you imagine getting that voicemail? And the guy called him back. It just, even though they listen, I have another vendor relationship, but I couldn't handle that. There was such a cute voicemail in that. So kids really can disarm things in that. And my son's always disarmed situations when he's gone in with me to go look at things or whatever, because of their innocence and because of their, just their way to look at things in that. So that's awesome that you had your daughter underwriting. I hadn't thought to do that. I probably will start having my son start to analyze deals for me too, because it really, there's not much math to it. It's just, it's right. Either an addition or subtraction is about it. And I can show them how to use Excel,
Yep. Pretty dang simple. Well, I love that. Nice work on getting your kids involved. And, Matt, looking forward, before we wrap this up, what trends or opportunities do you see in the real estate market, and how can investors position themselves to really take advantage of those opportunities going through the next couple of years?
Good stuff. Great question. I think that, Mike, what has been king in the last 10 years of real estate is appreciation, right? You see many people buying properties. I mean, they love to brag about it on Facebook too, but they bought a property for X and sold it for 2X a year later or 2 years later or whatever it is, right? That is no longer going to be the controlling factor. What's going to be the controlling factor is good old Robert Kiyosaki 101, cash flow. Right? Cash flow is going to be king in the market. And I think that investors are going to need to sacrifice, active investors like you and me, and passives that work with us and provide capital to us to put to work, right? They're going to need to forego a little bit of the potential upside that they might get. So the potential 15 to 20 to 25% return on their money in a year or in an IRR, in exchange for a deal that might provide 8 to 9 to 10% monthly checks, cash on cash return. That might mean looking at debt positions, loaning money versus taking an equity position. So we got to be a little more conservative, and we got to look at things that are going to provide regular, predictable streams of cash flow as soon as we get into them. So which is why DeRosa Group, my company, is actively, aggressively getting into hard money. And I think that hard money is going to become more prevalent as the market perhaps gets a little softer and things need a turnaround. Things might need a little injection of cash to help them round second base and head their way home. And unfortunately, things may fall apart that need to get put back together again. And hard money is a great tool to use for reassembling properties that might have been foreclosed on or taken back through a bank, or over to receivership, or getting put back, reassembled and capital improved or whatever. And so hard money can be a great bridge for that. And so DeRosa, my company, wants to be a major provider of hard money to the reassembly of some of these properties.
Got it. Well, Matt, I truly appreciate you sharing so much knowledge on this episode. Before we wrap up, or before we leave today, is there a certain way that our listeners can get a hold of you if they'd like to reach out?
Sure. Absolutely. The assessment I talked about is available on our website at derosagroup.com, DEROSA group.com, derosagroup.com. You can hear about equity positions that we have available if you want to consider investing with us. If you're accredited, and we also have non-accredited investments if we have a pre-existing relationship with you. So you can do that on our website, and you hear about all the different educational tools we have, and even a copy of my new book, Mike, on my website. So derosagroup.com.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thank you, Mike. Great being with you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our channel and leave us a 5-star review.